Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the One Step Better podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, and with me is Matt Patrick. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today as we're going to talk about hiring and people and processes around hiring, recruiting, all things bringing people into an organization. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into that, we always have our question of the week just to start us off. And so,
I hope
Matt,
it's not as deep as last week's question.
last week was, I felt like we needed to do in-depth conversations and counseling.
I don't have
and
a couch here to lay on to get.
Whew. This one's I think Becky learned her lesson. She's going to go a little more lighthearted here. Here's the question. What do you think is the most important thing for a workplace to have?
All right, I got a couple questions on that question.
Uh-oh.
Is it important or fun?
Fun is important.
Okay. And is it like a thing or is it like an emotion?
Oh, that's getting deep again.
Well,
so
I think like
the
so
question
like culture,
literally says thing.
Okay, so thing. Important thing.
You know what? We can make the question
I would
whatever
say
we want.
I would say culture is the most important. Like you have to have everybody kind of believing in the purpose, right? That's why I'd start with that.
I'm going to rephrase this. I'm going to put it a different way. If you had to, you can't say no, right?
Okay.
If you had to go find a job somewhere and you weren't able to own the business, you weren't in leadership, go find a job. What are the things that you would look for?
I have to have cool tech.
Yeah.
I have to have like a good working computer and a good monitor and a cool TV to like watch DirecTV on. I like to have cool tech. That's me.
Yeah.
How about you?
The technology piece, that's interesting. Tech is cool, but who doesn't have like a working computer these days? I don't know.
You ever been to the DMV?
I would not be applying for a job at the
That's
DMV.
right.
I want to go to a place that rewards hard work and good work.
Oh, I thought you said thing again. Man, that's the better answer.
I know, right?
You changed the rules.
That's the advantage of having this microphone.
That's right. I like that answer better. I'm going with your answer, Mike. I'm changing my answer.
The stuff is cool. I remember.
Honestly, I want people that I work around. I like to be around. That's my most important thing.
Yeah.
I'll figure out the rest of it from there.
I remember way back in probably early 2000s when everything was popping up with technology companies, and look, you can go here and play ping pong on your break, or they have an arcade in their break room and all of this stuff. And in the 20-year-old Michael, oh, that was pretty cool. That would be fun. But now the 38-year-old Michael is like, you know what? We have some cool stuff here. And
we barely ever use it.
We never. I very rarely use
Melanie
it.
plays games on it. And
Becky and Melanie had was a Galaga. But as soon as I learned that the high score got erased every night when it reset, man, I lost my interest. If there was
a whiteboard in that room, they have not figured out how to put the score on the whiteboard yet.
If it was a competition, I would be more into it.
Maybe we need a video game. Woo! A new idea. Video game tournament, March Madness style.
There you go. And so I want to work at a place where I know that I'm valued, that the work that I does matters, and that there's a team of people around me that I enjoy showing up for.
I like the idea that everybody wins. I want everybody to have the chance for them to control their own destiny, and I want them to work around people they really like.
Yeah.
Work on clients they really like.
But some of the fun stuff is fun too. I
want to have a ping pong table.
Yeah, you know what I think is fun? You ever go to like a pub or a bar and they have shuffleboard?
Oh yeah, I like that.
I think that would be fun. We can get a branded shuffleboard. What was it? That payroll company out in
Coastal Payroll has that.
Yeah, Coastal.
Tell us where you got that.
Yeah, they had a branded.
Listen to our podcast. No, I know that Debbie in the office still wants me to get one of those big punching machines.
Yes.
Where you can punch and see how much power you have, or a full blown like heavy bag.
Yeah.
Just to beat on some things from time to time when her kids. I guess it's when her kids are driving her crazy. I'm guessing it's not her kids. It may be her boss or other people in the office. But yeah,
it's when Matt slacks her.
I'll put my
2
face.
a.m. Hey Debbie, can you get me?
Never happens.
Right.
I never do that. But a heavy bag with my face on would be good.
That would be funny.
They have those ones that look like a person. Maybe I'll get that one.
Yeah, good coffee. That we've talked about coffee here on our podcast.
Yeah, coffee's important.
Got to have good coffee.
Snacks.
Which is not breakfast blend, just to be clear. It's not breakfast
blend's
blend.
Good, man. Medium roast. It's good stuff.
Snacks are good.
I think it's time to maybe mix up the snack bag.
I don't eat too many of our snacks here.
Yeah, I mean,
I like
have
the
a couple things.
peanut butter crackers. I'll eat those every once in a while. Almonds. I eat the almonds a good bit.
You're eating healthy.
I'm trying to eat more healthy. Yeah.
Where do you start that?
That's a good question. I'm going to start it. Oh, I'm really
Next
shooting
week,
for
maybe
2024.
Next week, maybe. I'll start next
2024 is
week.
going to be my year.
Yeah.
The snacks we get every once in a while. We get beef jerky sticks. Those go super fast.
Yep.
I like those.
Yeah.
But I don't like we get fruit snacks or fruit by the foot and the sweet snacks. I don't really do that here because I'm not looking to eat Oreos at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. I like.
There was a day.
Yeah.
There was a day.
I go with. We have a couple like animal crackers and I'll say Scooby snacks or just little bread cookies. I like those with a cup of coffee, either for breakfast or my afternoon coffee, one or the other.
Yeah.
If somebody gets smart, they can just get Gibson's every day. I'd be happy with that too. But I'm not sure it's good for my waistline.
Yeah, it is always a good day whenever you come in and somebody brought
Gibson's. Great. Yeah. Oh, they got that one. No, the chocolate. Just get chocolate. Everybody likes chocolate.
Yeah. I like the chocolate cake donuts that they make. Those are really good. You just like the straight up normal chocolate.
I like chocolate glazed, cinnamon, all the normal stuff.
Yeah.
None of this bacon maple garbage.
Have you? So there is I'll say donut truck, like a food truck that does donuts. They do the mini donuts. It's called Retro Donuts.
I probably like that. Yeah, the deep fried ones are kind of
they're
hot
Rose
still.
brought them in. It's Rose knows them, and she brought in a big old thing of little mini donuts.
Yeah, those are good.
And so I took my entire family out. We chased down the food truck and
Beat up the guy who stole his truck and took it home.
This is an embarrassing story, but I'll tell it anyway. We show up on a Saturday morning, and it's me and my whole clan, which is 6 people, right? 4 kids, me and my wife. And we order, they're mini donuts, and everybody has their own, because they have a bunch of different flavors. And so we talked about how we did the ice cream March Madness thing. Well, we're going to do it with donuts.
Oh, yeah?
So we ordered
a bunch of donuts.
We ordered about 6 dozen.
Sold them out.
Mini donuts.
Sold them out.
And whenever I go to pay, the lady looks at me and she says, "Oh, you win the day." So I was their biggest ticket for that Saturday.
Oh, wow.
We ordered 6 dozen donuts and 6 coffee drinks, and it was a lot of fun.
Mike ate 5.5 donuts. His kids get half a donut each, and we win.
Yeah, no, man, those kids can throw down donuts, but they were really good. Retro Donuts food truck. You can look them up. They're pretty good.
They're not sponsoring the podcast, so just
they're not. They're not. And they're not even a client.
Yeah.
But they just make really good donuts.
Yeah.
And if you make really good donuts and you ship us some, you don't have to be a client. I will mention your name on this podcast.
I know we're getting some bakery goods in the mail tomorrow. I heard from our friends up at Saratoga Bakery.
Yeah.
Mrs. London's Bakery up in Saratoga, New York, sending us some stuff down.
This is definitely
Thanks, Ryan.
The good part of having so many clients in the hospitality food industry space.
Correct. They should all. But if you love us and you're our client and you make food, we like to eat food, so send it our way.
Ascension Coffee has sent us some really good coffee.
Yeah, it's time to send us some more. Hey, Bill, send us more coffee.
Yeah. So anyway, enough about trying to plug getting free stuff into our office.
For some free. Yeah.
We will grovel over this.
Yes, right.
Free advertising. Send us your stuff.
That's right.
We'll
test it and see if it's okay.
That's right. We should start a YouTube channel like that Ryan kid where he plays with toys.
Just food.
Send us your food and we'll review it.
Yeah. It has to be like ready to go though. Warm.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. That's fair. We'll DoorDash it in.
That's right.
It's
a long trip from Dallas.
Coffee will need to be reheated. We started the podcast we're going to talk about hiring and bringing people in.
Yep.
Good workplace culture is everything for people today. If you think about as our working has changed and it's accelerated in COVID, but even prior to that, it changed. The idea that for some companies, not everybody, but for some, the idea that I have to go into a physical office and sit down at my computer at work and do all of my work and that's my day. I go home. That's no longer the norm. Well, it's probably still the norm, but it's no longer the reality for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so, as part of that shift, employers have had to get a little more strategic about how they find people, what they advertise, how they're posting job ads, what they're willing to accept in their people that they're bringing on, as far as flexible work schedules and work locations. And all of those things turn into more challenges that small businesses have to face. And so during this podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to talk through some of those challenges that we ran into about 3 to 4 years ago, how we have pivoted our hiring practice as a whole, and some of the things that we learned along the way to find things that have really worked well for us, some things that we had to tweak and adjust based on some feedback that we had gotten and things that we've seen in the process, and hopefully give you guys some ideas on how to find some really high quality applicants that are ultimately possibly going to turn into really strong employees inside of your organization. And so, Matt, I want you to take us back to probably 4 or 5 years ago, what it looked like to post a job and then what it looked like to apply for a job here at Patrick Accounting and Works.
Well, thinking back that far, I start with what even role we're trying to hire for. So we had an ad. They were kind of generic. We would be responsible for posting that ad to all the sites ourselves. We would get hundreds and hundreds of resumes, of which some of those may or may not have accounting in them, from hiring for an accounting person or a payroll person. We'd have a payroll specialist role that we'd put out there, and we'd get 500 resumes, of which 495 of them had no payroll experience whatsoever. We had no easy way to go through those other than kind of read through every one. We may have some baseline scoring based on depending on the site we were on, but it wasn't consistent across the board. We would then have to filter through all those ourselves, and we would bring those people in for our beginning of our process. At that point, we were doing a lot of on-site group testing, but it would be very much a manual process to figure out who we're going to filter through, and then it would be a very much manual process to grade the test and to do it all in the office and be super disruptive. And we would test 80 to 100 people for an accounting role to get maybe one person, to pass.
To give some listeners some context here, our process for coming onto our team in a staff accounting position is we did have the job post, but then after that, we do an assessment, what we call a bookkeeper test, that we put people through that tests their ability to do accounting functions, but also do it efficiently. And there's I'll say a proprietary formula for determining that, what we're not going to share.
It's really hard
because we had too many people that actually apply for a job and listen to our podcast here.
It's really complex.
And so they take a test, and then based on that test, it gives us a really good baseline understanding of their competency to do the work. Now, this isn't cultural fit stuff.
This is just
can
the
you do the
first
job?
wave scale ability for us to filter through the resumes we get. And what we find is if you can't pass that test, you're not able to competently do the job. You have to know a lot. The accounting questions we ask are very much accounting 101, but it's a test based on a lot of factors: speed, accuracy, attitude, all kinds of fun stuff that we're kind of finding out through that process.
But then if you did make it through and you passed the test, what was those next steps to get to hire?
Yeah, if you pass the test, we would put you through an interview process that may or may not be consistent depending on timing and when and who is going to interview you and when and what questions we're going to ask. It was very inconsistent. And if you did really, really well in the test, we may bypass a bunch of the stuff and just push you to the top of the line and start to look to hire you. And it's just very inconsistent and very subjective. I'd say subjective more than anything.
In that, it was, all right, hey, we have, Mike here is applied for a job and he passed the test. Who wants to interview him next Wednesday? And it's really who was available to talk to Mike next Wednesday at 10 o'clock or whatever time. And whoever was going to be there, didn't have a bunch of workload or whatever it was, they got pushed in that room in what we would call that group interview. And they would fire off questions, but they didn't have any real formal or even informal training on what questions to ask specifically, asking the same questions to multiple candidates, any type of procedural, this is what next steps looks like. It was very much, and at that point in time, we hired a person maybe once every 8 months or so. It wasn't, super often. And what we learned in that is for us to continue to grow, people was going to be our biggest bottleneck. And whenever we started posting ads looking for people, whenever we needed people, man, that was about 6 months too late to get started. And so we changed our entire, I'll say, thought process in hiring before we even touched a single procedure or system. And that thought process was, we always have to have the faucet turned on in order to never miss a really high quality candidate, but also to always be filtering through potential applicants.
Correct. That's tough as a small business until you have the budget to do it. But we found as we were making the budget to not do it was so much more expensive than the budget to do it. We were making a lot of hires kind of out of desperation. We weren't even necessarily going to all the right places. We didn't have a good way to disqualify candidates or to qualify candidates. We had not really identified well enough what does an ideal candidate look like in each role, what the job is going to entail, what's wanting to look like for the role, what skill sets do we want to have. We had ideas, and sometimes those play themselves out. We were very lucky. We hired a lot of great people before this process, but we may go through 6 or 7 people before we find the right one, and that's very costly to have 4 or 5, 6 people that didn't work out. You're training people over and over again for the same role. Yeah. And that's very inexpensive. That's very inefficient.
Yeah, and expensive.
And very, 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 very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that led to some conversations on what does that ideal process look like. If we could paint a picture of what it would look like to bring a person off the street into our organization as a fully onboarded employee, how can we do that in a way that is super efficient? Because anything that we do here at Patrick Accounting or Works, efficiency is always a word that is going to be used to describe it in some way. We don't do inefficient.
We try not to do
stuff to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
So we knew it was going to have to be efficient, but it was also going to have to be, I'll say, low labor, because we don't have. You mentioned budget. We don't have the budget for a full-time recruiter all the time. We don't have a full-time HR team that is always, watching out for these things. So we knew we had to have I'll say a low-touch system that's going to be able to work. And so what we did with that is we started with systematizing and putting some processes around that entire process from a people perspective. We said, this is who is going to be involved in each step of the way, so that we have a consistent feedback loop in every stage of bringing an applicant into our organization. And that turned into Caitlin is on our team, and after a couple of iterations, she got involved, and she really led the charge on developing a system or a process with an applicant tracking system to be able to systematize the hiring in a way that made sense. And so she's the first person that anybody sees whenever they're actually going through our application process now. Whereas before we were posting things manually to Craigslist or Indeed or Monster, Career Builder, and we were doing all those individually. Now we have a single point system that we push a button and all those job ads get posted out. One of the things that I learned along the way, I didn't even really think about this, is prior to all of this, our job ad was really just a job description. It was a little bit of, I'll say, cultural paragraph, and then here's the duties of the role. And one of the things that Caitlin did in this process is she changed that to really look at our job ads from a marketing perspective, instead of it being a true, this is just a description of the job. And so we wanted to attract a certain type of person that's gonna look at our organization and say that this is gonna be a good place to work. And the job ad had a big piece of that. So once we did that, we started that first testing phase and took that completely out of our office. Whereas before, people were coming in and we were doing group round testing, we turned that completely electronic. And there was a lot of hesitation to do that, simply because if I can take a test online, you know who else I can use for that test? Mr. Google, who's right there in the browser next to me.
And we troubleshooted that. And Caitlin really did a good job of troubleshooting a lot of those issues that could come up in that process. It's a time test. We have show your work type stuff, and that we can see that they're actually doing the work. They can't take it more than one time. There's all kinds of little tests done, triggers there. But really, a lot of it to do is we've tested enough people now in the new way that we still have a good scoring system to know if they're what's passing and not. We have had successful hires that have taken the online test, and we know that because based on our scores that they're able to be successful here. So it was worth the endeavor. But also, more importantly than that, as part of that process, Caitlin's done a wonderful job of being consistent with the process and the questions she's asking and how the process is supposed to work.
We've templated out every question that's asked in every stage of our interview process. And I say every question that's asked. It's really
All
not
the
that
questions
strict.
should be asked.
But we have a list of questions. These are the questions that you're going to ask, and you may leave off 2 or 3 or whatever. But this is essentially the information that we're trying to pull out of the candidate to get to know, are you a good fit here, and can you do the job that we're asking you to do? And having that standardized has allowed us to repeat and train on that. Whereas before it was, hey, Becky, are you free on Tuesday? Because we have somebody coming in to interview. And Becky's over there like, sure, I could do that because I just got asked to do that by my boss. But I got no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, and we're interviewing, when you interview for a payroll role or accounting bookkeeper role. Okay, I don't do that job now. How do I know what questions to ask?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there's always a level of, well, sure, our people will say, yeah, I'll take care of that, and then go try to figure it out. That's kind of the people we hire. And they were kind of thrown to the wolves in a lot of ways to make that happen. And we got inconsistent results because really at the end of that first interview with actual people, before we kind of changed our process, it was, did you like them? Did you not like them? And that was the qualifying question for if that person moved to the next step. Did you like them or did you not like them?
So they passed the test, and do we like them or not like them?
Yeah. And now there was a lot more conversation. Like, we're making this out to be
It
much
wasn't-
more simpler than it
Yeah,
was.
we had an application and we had a list of questions, but we didn't always consistently ask them, and we had different people interviewing them so that we wouldn't know everybody's scale of what they thought was good or bad. It wasn't like just generic. We don't ask any questions. We had an interview,
Yeah.
but it would be very inconsistent.
Yeah. And standardizing that has allowed us to really repeat that multiple times and have some really good data to show, you know what, this is the kind of person that we know is going to make it through. It weeds out the people that we know aren't going to be a fit here long term. And that's been that's been a big change for our company. And we've been doing that now for, is it 2 years, 3 years?
Almost 3, yeah.
Almost 3 years now. And have seen some decent results out of it. The ability to get the online test, I think, was a big deal, and getting enough test runs through there to actually see that our kind of the baseline standards weren't super far different from the non-online version.
Correct.
But once that got kind of cleared out, it's really been pretty nice.
We have hired 15 people in the last 2 years, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that number, I'd say we've only lost two of those I can think of off the top of my head that we've brought on since that point. Now, before that, our retention rate was really pretty crappy. And it wasn't necessarily that we lost our core, but the new people we were hiring weren't sticking.
Yeah, our turnover was
All new people.
90% within 12 months.
Correct. So we were growing, but we were adding people and having to replace them on a frequent basis. So we may have to hire 3 or 4 people to get to one.
Yeah,
net.
and it was a clear sign that we were bringing on the wrong people.
Correct.
With those stats.
And it wasn't that the people are bad. They weren't the right fit for us. And that's okay. And we get that. We're not perfect for everybody. And the work we're doing is a little bit unique, and how we do things are a little bit unique. So all that stuff becomes a little bit of a challenge. What I've appreciated about the new process is we all kind of have the same mindset. We're following the Lencioni ideal team player mindset of hungry, humble, smart. So we know what kind of our people we're looking for. And then from there, we are consistent with the questions we're asking against. We're trying to make sure we measure those. We've identified our firm values, and we're going against that. And then we're trying to make sure that the competency is there. And then we really want to make sure the culture fit is there. It really has allowed us to do a lot better job of finding the right people for the right job. Knowing what we're looking for has been a big difference. You know, this is the role we're trying to fill. Here's a skill set that people have that have been successful here. Let's try to see if we can measure that. And we kind of created ideal skill sets, and personality traits that fit those roles that helped helped a lot.
Yeah. And so our process over time has evolved to where it is now, and we constantly tweak it to make it even better. Both from an efficiency standpoint and from an effectiveness standpoint. We're looking at now doing inline background checks as part of our systems, whereas before it was kind of outside of that, just because we have the ability to do that now. What does it look like to make some more standardized testing for other positions? And all of those things are things that we're constantly looking at because we do want to be more efficient in the way we do it, but we also have to be more effective because ultimately in our business, our people are our number one assets. If we have good people, we will be successful. And if we have bad people, somebody's going to be left holding that bag. And the people on our team don't want to hold any more bags for anybody else.
Correct. Every time we have to hire somebody that doesn't work out, the inefficiency of that process of training them, onboarding them, and then having to do it all over again it's very draining, and it feels like you just got kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
It's you want to make sure you are successful at it. I like the approach that we're doing now with recruiting all the time. It made a big difference too, is we're kind of always looking for the next best person.
Yeah. And the thing I like about it is every once in a while, Caitlin will send me a Slack and say, hey, I got this person and they tested really well. Their resume looks really good. We may have just hired somebody for that role, but this person looks really, really good. We would have never, looked at that person before because the spigot would have been off. And to be able to make those decisions from a leadership standpoint, to be able to see, hey, we have somebody that has a potential. Let's put them through the paces and see, ultimately that's developing the bench and having those options now that we did not have before. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, we just did this. We just hired 2 new administrative people with the intent of hiring 1. And then we decided, you know what? We actually found 2 great candidates. Let's hire them both.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got some questions here written down that I think are kind of frequently come up anytime we start to talk about hiring. And so we're going to run through some of these questions and then we'll wrap it up. I talked a little bit about job ads. What does that job posting look like? What do you think should and shouldn't be in a job post?
It should be a clear definition of what winning looks like in that role. And it should be what you're trying to find. It shouldn't put any fluff around it. If you're looking for somebody with specific skills, you need to have that in the ad. You need to make sure you're talking about why you're unique and why you're different. We are a unique accounting firm that is different. We need to make sure we're telling that in the story. It is from the perspective as you're marketing yourself as a place where you want people to come apply for a job. It's the same as you're putting in, advertisement out to go to a restaurant. Same thing. You are advertising them to come to work for you. Now, granted, some of that self-promotion is word of mouth. Hey, I have a friend who works over there, or I'm a client of yours, or I'm a friend of a client who loves working with you guys. Those are great people that we want to have, come to work for us. But that's an inbound lead. If you think about it from a marketing perspective, we're going to do some hunting. We're going to go find people and be creative and think about a lot of different ways for them to come find us.
Yeah. You're selling your story.
You have to sell your story.
Because ultimately, anytime you are putting a job ad out there, your goal is not to hire a person. Your goal is to hire the right person.
Correct.
And the right person is going to see that and see your story that you're telling and make a decision on their side. Is this a place that I want to be a part of or not? Just a person will look at that and say, hey, there's a job, I'm going to apply for it. But the right person is going to evaluate that and make a decision for themselves, not just there's a job that I need to apply for.
I mean, we're no different than a lot of other businesses, right? You're competing with, we're in a town that has FedEx, International Paper, AutoZone, 3 large corporate places. You also have all the big firms are here. All the large regional firms are here. We're competing with all those people for some of the same employees. And some of the people we're wanting to hire from are at those places now going, I like doing this type of work, but I don't like doing it this way. Mm-hmm. I have to know that there's a different way out there, a different perspective to, why we are unique and how we want to approach our clients as unique.
Yeah, I like doing tax work, but I don't like doing it 80 hours a week for 30, 40 weeks a year.
Correct.
Well, maybe we should talk about that.
Correct. Yeah. Or I don't get any client interaction, or I really don't get to know my clients, or my clients just look at me as a cost, not an investment, and they don't appreciate the work we do. That's different. We want to find clients that do appreciate the work we do. So,
how many steps do you think should be in the process?
As many steps as necessary to find the right. No, I think
That's my answer. As many steps.
It's probably true, but the reality is, I want to have enough perspective for people both in that position, in leadership in that position, but also. Like we have Greg who does HR for us, but he is in he's in all of our interviews now because we want to make sure he has another perspective involved in the process. We're doing a multifaceted review of the person from a cultural standpoint and from a competency standpoint.
At a minimum, we have 3 different, I'll say interviews, different meetings with our people on our team.
At least 3,
We
most
have
time 4.
We have at least 3. And that looks like you're doing a first baseline screening with Caitlin. It moves to what we call a group interview round. It's really just me and Greg that we're talking through character and cultural fit stuff. And then you're going to have an interview with other people on our leadership team to make a decision. Normally, it's either make a decision there or there'll be a follow-up interview. But people in our leadership team that's going to make a decision about where we're going with this particular candidate. I am a proponent of hiring slow. This is just me, my perspective from my end. We've turned this place into more of a destination job than just a job. To toot our own horn a little bit, this year we won Memphis Business Journal Best Place to Work in our category. And I think that's a large part because we've been able to bring people on that fit what we're doing and are highly competent and skilled to do it. And that is a byproduct of hiring the right people. And being slow about that has played a role into that. We don't want to bring people on to fill a chair because it's open. I would rather that chair stay open than put somebody in it that's not a right fit. And we're now, because that hasn't always been the case, but we're now at a position where we can do that a little bit more than we could before.
Correct.
And it's paid dividends.
It has. And what I like about that mindset too is the pain of letting a bad person go is a lot worse than the pain of not having the right person on the team yet. And so in my mind there is, I'd rather have an empty seat than the wrong person in the seat.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be really painful to train that wrong person and take it's a very heavy cost. The extra work we can spread around, we have enough people, resources, we can go get the work done. We'll figure it out. We have a great team that would rather figure it out than have a bad person on the team.
Yeah. And, we all hear the stories, and you've probably experienced it, where you let that bad person go and everybody around you is breathing a sigh of relief. And in some ways, like, why did you take so long? Like, how have you not seen this way long ago? And it's always fun to hear those stories from your team saying, man, it took you forever.
I've been drinking and I get to get, no. The story there is usually, you hope you haven't made a bad decision. You hope that you want to make sure you have enough grace with this new person coming on board, that you've trained them appropriately and you give them all the resource, this possibility to succeed. So you're probably, in your heart that they're probably not going to be able to make it long term, but you want to give them every chance to do that, because letting them go is hard. Most of the time though, and you probably should go ahead and figure that out. It's hard for somebody to change their strategy. I have had a couple occasions where it has, with the wrong person in the wrong seat, not necessarily the wrong person. I mean, the right person in the wrong seat is what we had. And so we move people around, we find them blossom a little better. Mm-hmm. But when you have the wrong person, wrong seat, that's a problem.
Last question, then we'll wrap things up. How do you go about finding the right person? I feel like this is one of the hardest questions to ask, because in our experience, everybody for the most part that is on our team right now has been brought in either from a recruiter or through just a job ad. There's not very many people that is a friend of a friend that came on board. We have a couple of those.
Becky was a friend of a friend.
Yeah, we have a couple of those, but most of our stuff is just from we posted a job ad.
We have to do a good job of telling our recruiters and also internally recruiting for it to really define what we're ideally looking for. It's just like finding the ideal client. You have to make sure you're really clear about why that person's a good or not fit. And Caitlin is great at this, and that she is pretty black or white when it comes to this. It's, this person's not a fit because of this, and she's not afraid to tell the recruiter this. This person didn't score well enough on the test. This person didn't come prepared for the interview. This person didn't know anything about us, even though we've told them to look at our stuff before they show up. They've done nothing to research this job. It's just another job to them. If it's just another job to you, you are not going to be successful here.
And having Caitlin in that first seat of being that
person who
cares about our culture like more than or just as much as anybody else here, and she will not let you through. It's not even close. You won't
Yeah.
even get a chance unless she knows that you would actually fit in here.
Yeah, I mean, she's very particular. I mean, like, hey, you show up late to the interview, it's going to show up on the notes, and you are not prepared or not keen on the tech that we're trying to get you to go through in the beginning of the processes. She knows those are deal breakers for us, and
Because
so,
she knows how important they are for the people who are here.
correct. If you can't do those things, you're not going to be successful here. So she's like, let's cut it now.
I will say that the one thing that here's the secret sauce about getting past Caitlin. If in your in your first screening you mention that Reddit that you're heavy on Reddit, she likes Reddit users. I joke her about it because a lot of the people that she'll pass through, some of their favorite websites are Reddit. So if you like Reddit, you got a good chance with Caitlin.
Or MySpace. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, MySpace. Yeah. So, I mean, that's some of the stories that we've gotten to experience over the years. We've hired a lot of really bad people. We've hired a lot of really good people. We've learned a lot along the way. Matt, do you have some final thoughts that you want to add before you wrap it
just
up?
real quick. I would say that, the biggest thing here is have a consistent process that you want to follow every single time for every role you have. And it usually starts with making sure you have a clear definition of who you're trying to hire. Make sure you have a good, in our world, KRA, but a good, clear definition of what does winning look like in this person I'm trying to hire. Now you can go try to hunt those people down.
Yeah, very good. Well, if you're out there listening, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang out with us for a few minutes. We do have one question a follow-up question from last week. Last week we talked about some small business issues, just kind of a hodgepodge of issues that small businesses face. And one of the questions that came in was regarding their customers. It was essentially asking, I'm going to paraphrase the question because it was long. Essentially, is it better to keep your current customers or go get new ones?
You want to keep your current customers if they're the right customer.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
I want both. I want new ones and old ones.
I want the ideal customer. So if you brought a bad client in or a bad customer in, it's important that you know when it's not the ideal customer and you find them a better place to be than you. And then you want to keep growing. I mean, every business wants, I believe, that needs to keep growing. Go find new customers that are ideal fits. And then the moment you realize they're not, you need to cut bait.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I'm going to give you some grace
Counsel them
here.
first.
When you realize that you have a bad customer that doesn't fit your ideal profile, that does not always mean tomorrow they're no longer a customer of yours.
Correct.
That is you acknowledging that that there is a plan in place to remove that person or that customer from your book, and that may be a 3-month transition, that may be a 6-month transition, but ultimately everybody's on the same page with the goal is we got to coach this person out.
We did early on what we call a forced churn. So every time we brought 2 new good clients on, we could let go of a bad client. We're still net growing and we're changing our book. If you think about it, if you had an ideal book of clients all the time, it's great, but there's always still a bottom 2. No matter what, you're going to rank them in orders. There's still people at the bottom of that list. So you can constantly go through the idea of a forced churn. I like that approach.
Getting picked last doesn't mean that you suck. It just means that you're not as good as everybody else.
Yes, it's if you had 10 LeBron James, would you go find 11th? You probably would.
Yeah.
And you'd find out who the worst LeBron James is and go get rid of him. Yeah. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, Coach K never stops recruiting, right?
Exactly.
He has 10 McDonald's All-Americans. He's still going to recruit because there's one that's not as good as the rest.
Yep, exactly right. And when you develop that mindset in your organization around your customers, that is definitely a way to get one step better every day because
and your employees.
Customers.
And your employees.
Yeah, but the question was about employees, about customers.
I know, but we talked about Anyway, we got it.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time, like I said. And so make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you're listening. You click a like button, leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. You can always email us at onestepbetter@Patrick Accounting. And if there's anything that we could do to help you out, please let us know. Thanks and have a great day.